just a short stretch. It goes from North Willamette Boulevard down here to Edison Street.
So why was it called Bernie's Hill?
Because Bernie lived on the top of that the hill in that old house up there.
The orange one?
And so that was like Uncle Paul's era. He knew Bernie. He's like, Bernie's Hill. Bernie lived there. Bernie's Hill. I didn't know Bernie was when I was a kid. So when it didn't snow too much, we would go from there and down to here. But as we got older, you really want a lot of action, and you went down there. So this is the cook's house right here where we're at, and very nice people. The man actually saved David Kress' life years ago there out of Sauvie's Island. Mr. Cook was had been a lifeguard, and John Kress didn't know how to swim. Dad didn't know how to swim, and so David had gone out on an inner tube, and so Mr. Cook happened to be there, and he swam out in the river and brought the inner tube back. One day he's walking through the neighborhood, and I said, "Can I ask you a question, Mr. Cook?" I told that, he said, "I remember that." Yeah, I did that. So it was confirmed by him, him himself. But the Kress family remembered that.
I'm sure.
So this is where I used to kind of hang out, deliver newspapers as part of my paper route. Some new homes here.
Yeah.
But this blue home, it was green back then. And it was the address map, 9749 North Edison. And that's where those two war heroes lived as children.
Okay.
More than likely they went to sit in grade school. They did. They both graduated from Roosevelt. Yeah, and nicest people, must have been their parents that I was delivering newspapers to, and I never even knew about that, So my paper route was 43J. J stood for journal. It took in North Weyerhaeuser to North St. John's Avenue, North Edison to North Jersey. So when I was growing up, this area wasn't developed down towards the river, so we would call it let's go downhill.
Thank you. Oh, he's teasing.
So in the summer months or whatever, we would go fishing. I used to sell night crawlers for 25 cents a dozen up there, and we had our fishing poles, nothing else going on. Let's go down the hill, and there's two sets of railroad tracks. Grandma Joan would always say, "Be careful of the trains, and if you go in the water, don't get caught in the logs." Now this was Leif Erickson's home right here. He's a longshoreman.
I remember meeting him.
Yeah. He always smoked a pipe. He always reminded me of Popeye. And he grew up here as well. He grew up on North Syracuse Street. The home is still standing. This home was not always here. This home was one of the homes that was moved here, I think, from North Minnesota Avenue. Because the old timers referred to I-5 as Minnesota Freeway. Because they just moved all these homes. You want to buy the home? Yeah, here it is. It's already put together. They moved it. And so this was North Edison. Down here is, you go down here, and this is where we picked blackberries, and David Kress would buy, sell Grandma Joan the blackberries for the pies. And it was the story of the snake, where Grandma Joan is we're down here picking berries, and I see a snake behind Aunt Jackie, and it's in the sticker bushes. And I said, "Aunt Jackie, there's a snake next to you." And of course, with her sense of humor, she said, "No, there's not." And then she turned and she screamed, "There was a snake there." So that was where we go. We walked down, and I didn't know it was a city kid or a country kid. So actually, right down here, we had forts. Because what you would do is there were sticker bushes, and you'd take a big stick, and we'd clear away for our forts. Call them forts. I don't know why, but
What's down there now?
It's partly developed, and there was an old Native American cemetery here. I have it in a book of the cemeteries in the state of Oregon. This one is documented. It actually put off the development for some time because you did not want to disrupt those old graves. So again, this was Leif Erickson's home, and oh my gosh, his widow still lives here.
Yeah.
And this was all his property. And this would, you continue down here. You could drive all the way down to the bottom, or close to the railroad tracks.
I remember walking down here. It was the woods.
Yeah. I brought you and Cassie down here, and there's some old St. John's old timers like Danny Waldron. He's about 80 years old. He still owns the house down the corner of Edison. So there was an old lady who used to attend the Heritage Association meetings. And she told me that she lived on the other side of Weyerhaeuser, where Continental Can property was, and her parents there was no running water and so forth. And then they built this home, this old home off to the left up here.
The blue one?
But yep, between Willamette and Edison, and her parents built that house. It goes
Oh.
way back. But they didn't have enough running water or anything.
That was the best house to trick or treat at.
Oh yeah. A couple old homes back in here. Most of these are new developments. Mark Kress, my friend that I grew up with, the one who got the motorcycle pursuits, the one I drove to the road to the beach with at Rockaway, Oregon. We left St. John's at 4:30 in the morning, arrived in Rockaway, Oregon at 9 o'clock at night. He lived at 10035 North Edison, and his home is still here. So back in the day, there was St. John's alumni here because Anita Woolsey lived here. She went to Roosevelt, and then you had Diane Schabel, Mark's mom, and Mary John Crest, and this was Mark's home. And then you had Dwayne Carlson and his wife Monterey. She went to Roosevelt. And then there's Danny Waldron. He went to Roosevelt. He's 80 years old now. He still lives there.
Oh, wow.
And when I was growing up, there was an old lady that lived in this house. It looks like they tore the old house down, and that's.
Yeah.
But over here, again, Native Americans, and through there. And we used to have a kind of racetrack thing in through here, and then the kids would, I didn't, but the local kids here didn't have much money for stuff, so they'd just get cooking pans and stuff, and it was icy, they'd go down the field. And Danny had a big swing right here. And this house is an old one, actually, unless they've rebuilt it.
The green one?
No, that one.
Yeah.
That's the old one. Yeah. You go to Portland Maps, it'll show you that. Here, I thought I'd be grasping for stuff to talk about.
No, I knew we'd have to split it up into different tours. Otherwise, it'd be an 8-hour tour.
Oh, there's a mean old lady that lived in this old house right here, and we didn't do anything. We're just going down the hill, and she banged on the window, and we couldn't tell what she was saying, but whatever it wasn't nice.
It's funny. I remember they had the big yard, but
Yeah, it was.
not long ago they sold it, and that house was built.
Yeah, they split it up. This was the Senate's house. The Senate's built that in about 1951. They also lived in Parkside Homes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The one, let's see, the Shackletons down there. Okay, so that's Pilkowski's house. That was originally just a garden for old man Pilkowski. He drove a white and like a orange 55 Oldsmobile, and when the balls went into his yard, he would line them up on the top of his garage. Why? I don't know. Because the kids would just get up there and get the balls off his garage. But and so that was his. And this is Steve Allen's home, this old white home here. And then the Shackletons over here, like Vicki Dean, Jimmy, she grew up here. Shackleton family goes back a long ways. One of them became an FBI agent. Victor Shackleton, class of 47. And then, what's the mom's name? I forget her name now. She's class of 49. And so that was the Shackleton house. It's still there. This is the Miller's home. They go back a long way. This is the grandson of the original owners that were here.
Oh, wow.
His mother's a immigrant war bride from New Zealand, I think it was. So that was that family. They used to deliver newspapers down here. Warren's, and this is part of my route too. They tore down the old Warren's house that was right here. And I remember coming through one summer day, and there's laurels, and there was bees got into my shirt.
Oh, no.
And I ran up on the Warren's house, and I remember the old Mrs. Warren looking through the window, and I'm tearing off my shirt, and she's like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I was getting stung by bees."
Oh.
And there's an old house in the corner. She would give me presents at Christmas. Here's some small thing like a Lifesavers, a box of Lifesavers or something that meant a lot to a little 11-year-old kid. Millers lived here as well. Not related to those Millers. Skip Miller, he's passed away. Billy Warren, he served in the Army. Yeah, a lot of the guys that served a lot of them were impacted by the military.
A whole bunch of
And so then, as we covered a little bit of this before, and that is, so next door, this was Hayden Purcell. Hayden was a Portland policeman, and that's the older brother of Chuck Purcell, and Jerry Purcell owns that now. And the Chuck and Rose Purcell bought this around 1951 or so. Their oldest son, Rick Purcell, was born June 14th, so he's just a few days younger than me. We were both in kindergarten together in the afternoon class at Sitton. Rose Purcell was at the library at Sitton. I took you there when you were little, and you got the. Hey, why don't you borrow these books, Mike? But if they don't come back, I'm sure they wouldn't miss them. And then there was Esther, lived over there. She's related to Dick Glenn. I think that was his grandmother. Old St. John's family. And to our right is the home of Howard Galbraith.
Oh my God.
And he was the unofficial mayor of St. John's, and he's the one we talked about who helped advocate for Cathedral Park and the Jazz Festival, and class of 1930 at Roosevelt, and very advocated. There's pictures of him on the top of St. John's City Hall, the traffic division, because he got that bell working again. The bell at the top of the precinct up there. And he has a great arrowhead collection here. I've got to interview him.
I cannot.
Oh. And so again, old house. There used to be a mother-in-law's place back there. It looks like they actually rebuilt it. And Terry Carroll, who I graduated with from Roosevelt, same year as me, she grew up here in the corner house right here. Although she went to James John School, I don't think she went to Sydney. And Carroll Estates, that belongs to her mother. Old home here. Oma almost bought a house a couple of doors down. And then this is the block I grew up on. There's an old man named Butch. Butch had, in fact, I took out his rose bushes. I can't believe it. They were there until last summer. We'd come back from St. John's Theater, and we'd stop and visit. And Grandma Joan knew what she was doing. It was nighttime, and Butch would pretty soon. Here you go. Here's a bouquet of roses. And so, who I mentioned Leif Erikson before. He grew up in this house. This is the Erikson home.
Oh, wow. Thank you, buddy.
This was the Sullivans here. This was the Barry family, Tony Barry.
So good.
This was the Novaks. In fact, how it ties in was somebody's been sitting there for a long time.
You guys look out that window.
So the
Okay.
Novaks were
Yeah.
mentioned. Yeah, we're gonna head home now.
All right, sweetheart. We'll head home.
Brief. This was the what is their name? I'll come up with it. So this is Benny Guidarelli. Benny's about 97 years old now. I interviewed him a couple of years ago unofficially. He still goes to the Ranger Tavern for lunch or a beer every day. This is where I grew up, 9846 North Syracuse Street. And this was originally called Maple, right here. It wasn't always Reno Street. So this is the corner that I played.
I know, buddy.
What?
He wants to go to the Grandma Jones house.
Well, we can go there pretty soon. She'll be out Sunday. That was Rodney Buen's house. This was the Brainer's house. This man, was it Wilson? Yeah, Wilson. He worked with my grandfather on the railroad. This is the Gerlich's house. This is Ronnie Buen's home. He's only lived in 2 homes his whole life.
On the same block.
On the same block.
street.
This is Rochelle Buen. This is her grandparents' house.
Oh, okay.
And this was the Blevins home over there. You went to school with some of the Blevins, maybe. And
Sounds familiar. Oh, poor guy has to go to work.
be a neat place to live. There's a dead end street. Oh, this is the tower. Aunt Jackie climbed that tower. I want nothing to do with climbing that tower. And it used to say Buin was cool because Rodney Buin took a can of spray paint. Okay, we're heading back. And there's the Shirley Ann. That's the story about what happened behind that. The Shirley Ann vehicle. She lived over here.
So you know which one?
Yeah, on this home right here.
This one?
Yeah.
What is it?
And I can't make out the ad.
Yeah, me either. It's hard.
Yeah, so it was 10023, and so she lived here, and her brother was David Leroy Clark, and he was killed in Vietnam in September 1968. And he's on a war memorial.
I recently met one of her brothers.
Say again?
I think I recently met one of her brothers.
Howell?
I don't know. I can't remember.
There was two brothers.
It must have been then.
No, the other one died, drowned.
Oh.
Mike drowned, and Dave lost life in Vietnam. And I felt sorry for that mother. And then she lost her first husband in World War II as part of on a bomber crew. I look through the window at summertime, and she was smoking a cigarette. And I was just a kid, I was like 10 years old, and I kind of knew what some of the things that happened, and I always felt for her. And this was Crouchley's home, old St. John's family.
From Plumbing?
Yep.
Oh.
Dick Crouchley owned that. Dick Crouchley's father owned Crouchley Plumbing. Way back there every time. And this is the famous Your Inn Tavern. No, I'm headed home, by the way. This is Your Inn Tavern, and the sign even says since 1923. So obviously it had to be a grocery store.
Yeah.
No alcohol. And I gave them pictures of this way back in the day. It was in the 1920s or 30s. They didn't have that. And then we're coming up on the local hospital where Dr. Graves worked. Your mom and I looked at this because it's a residential home now. Right now we considered buying it. Here we go. On Willamette and Trumbull, right here.
That used to be a hospital, you guys.
Yep, that was a
That
hospital.
big house right there.
Look at, see, there's stairs went up here on the side.
That would be a hot.
Yeah.
And this home was the first home that, as a family, Grandpa Austin and Grandma Joan rented this home.
Oh.
And we're on Willamette and St. Louis at 910. Is it 9108?
Yeah.
9108 North Lombard. But Grandma Joan was here first because she moved here in 1947 to live in the Parkside homes.
Yeah.
And so there was the Dr. Graves, or Dr. McChesney I was referring to.
Yes.
So this was his home, and as you can clearly see, his name is engraved in the upper portion, Dr. McChesney. And we're on the corner of North Willamette and Chicago. There used to be a crow's nest up there. So the lady that owns it claims to be, or her son claims that his mother is the oldest female surviving alumni. Eckhoff is their last name, and she is supposed to be class of 1939. My friend Paul Swenson claims that he's probably the oldest surviving male alumni, class of 1940.
I always loved that house.
Yeah, there's some oldies. There's some oldies up above here too. But can you imagine when this was put in? It's like, oh, the bridge is in now.
Yeah.
And it won all kinds of awards, and it's just people take pictures of it. It's great. And then of course City Hall up above there. And I'll share some of these pictures with you. And that's the neat thing, Genevieve, that people took pictures and people documented and they told their stories. My mom's friend Mimi was always afraid that the car was going to tip over on this hill, so she didn't want to. By the way, I'm personally responsible for not having cars parked here because people were parking there and it's driving me nuts, and I kept complaining. This is where our friend Harriet, class of '64, lived. So there's the I talked about the history of water in St. John's. And it was just off here in pretty much the same location. The people said, "Oh, there's funny taste of the water. Water tasted good." Well, it's because the pipes back then were made out of wood.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it tasted like the wood. And it was here, and I can show you the original photographs of those water towers.
Wood pipes.
Yeah, and including, I was calling up a couple of years ago talking with the guy with the Water Bureau and history guy. He's talking about the history of the sewers in Portland, of all things. And so our names are in the Astor School. They still have the courtyard out there,
Yep.
and the names are there. So prior to Fred Meyer's, which is about 1960 or so, all mom and pop businesses. Grandma Joan did not drive back then, and so we would say, well, we're going to downtown. Downtown was downtown St. John's. We get our shoes at Jowers, we get our clothes at B&C, occasionally the man shop, you know. And of course, the famous The Cut, which was always more to learn. Always more to learn. I didn't, it was Rebecca from Lung Fung educated me on a lot of that as well.
So, what is this area then? Because that was St. John's, and now we're past the Cut.
Well, at some point here, you're reaching the university area because the names are named after universities: Stanford, Yale, and so forth. Okay, so, and so, really is a mix: white collar, blue collar. In the core of St. John's, mostly blue collar. Some of them were skilled machinists, carpenters, electricians. Grandpa being a longshoreman. Both of my grandparents were railroad men. Grandpa Brown worked 43 years in the Union Pacific, and my Grandpa Gould in England, and he worked all the way through World War I, World War II on the railroad. And I've got a really neat train station photograph of it's a Portsmouth section, like Portsmouth and Lombard area, So it's kind of interesting because you'll have people didn't really travel that much beyond where they were growing up back then. So like Paul Swenson, he's on the east side of the Cut. He doesn't know much about Deep St. John's. He knows about this area. He knows Weir Cycle and Hobby. Bought a bicycle from Gordon Weir for $1 a month. He ended a local paper route. A lot of the guys had paper routes back then. A lot of money. I made a whole $25 a month on my paper route. Pretty good money. And it did. It gave me spending money. My first allowance was 50 cents a week, and that was for taking out the garbage. And it had a burn barrel. So when I was paper, I'd take a match and I'd start firing the burn barrel. No. Oh, I'll get you some gas. Use burn up gas. Where do you usually gas up at?
Anywhere.
Yeah. Just through the Lombard and Portsmouth and stuff.
Ah!
It's kind of neat because you see these old homes mixed in with the new ones. Michael Reeves' wife.
I think the time bombs are about to go off, Dad.
What do you mean?
The kids.
Oh yeah, but you want to gas up, right? We're on empty,
Or not.
and then we'll just head home. I got two points left. I'll pay cash, make it quick. They've been pretty good. Blake this morning, I thought he was asleep. Well, she's probably listening. She's going to repeat everything back to me later on.
The girls were listening. I heard Kaylee repeating some interesting tidbits to Ellie.
Interesting what?
Interesting tidbits of stories that you were telling. I heard her repeating them to Ellie.
Really?
She loves history.
Who does?
Kaylee.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she watches documentaries in her spare time on YouTube.
Oh my god.
Of Disney.
Of Disney.
This taco guy here's got this van over here. Oh my gosh, that's good food.